And then I'd like to hand over to Malika. If you'd like to introduce yourself in any way, you're welcome to. If you want to dive into your poems, whatever works is up to you.
Thank you. It is a gift to be not load shedding, but to be in the circle with you, and my first experience of the Red Wheelbarrow. The series of poems that I prepared are part of a new collection that I'm hoping to launch in September, and it's called Grief Seed. Some of the pieces in that book have been previously published, but it's partly a journey that I feel is so much a reverberation of this time. And without saying too much, I'll let the journey speak for itself. And we'll go however it goes, slow. For each life, a single story spine. Between each vertebra, coded secrets revealed only through questioning over time. Locked in the braided bone chamber of my spine, an archive I now return to, recalling experiences dissolved into memory, fragmented yet not lost. Beyond all the bending, twisting, shifting, extending I have done since those intersections in my life, my body, your body, bears witness. Every second, every choice, every wound and subsequent scar, every promise, every regret, every second, every choice, every dream or desire, I cannot, we cannot forget. For each life, a single story line, a yearning for home, certainly mine.
Is Malika frozen for anyone else?
Hide from the light, not your tongue, your mind chattering a scratched record in the night. Let the wound weep. Let it. Letting is never easy, yet somehow, always part of the getting better, getting over, coming through, even when you cannot see, something vital is being retrieved. Let the wound weep for its own coming into being, for all the time it took for you to finally look at it, naked and raw, swollen and sore, inflamed like never before or once more. Let the wound weep. Let it rage and sob and howl. Hear its call in solitude or in crowds. Listen for when and how to answer. When to play, stay shallow. When to dive, sink deep. Now stay here, grounded by its presence. Let the wound weep. Breathe, go slowly. Healing is a dawning, can feel like losing, burning, drowning, or even dying. Only the wound knows how many days or ways. Here I begin. Here I begin. You must begin. Will you begin? Begin. Ash. Fire words hiss and spit from my mother's mouth, emitting her wrath, singeing my heart skin. In seconds, I'm a quivering girl, voice run dry in the face of her fuming. My water tongue fails to dilute her venom or wash away her certainty of a history of offenses. I swallow my opinions, switch to mute, amplify my listening, suppress this tide rising in me, easing the swell and deepening my breath. Each story, she is sure, would have turned out differently if she hadn't been denied the victory of the last word or felt she was heard. Assuming her battle stance, her body hardens with each smoldering word. She recalls the detailed lines of assault, blaming everyone but herself. I am her daughter, singing water songs, while she continues fuming, turning my imagined bridges mid-sentence to a silent snow of ash, a silent rain of ash. Daughter, remembering Iman, heart suspended in memory waters, a daughter's umbilical anchoring, then sudden rupture, the floating away. For a mother, a father almost cried out, silence is now the best way to say. Fresh white paint on gray bricks, sacred herbs, rainbow halo of roses. placed by a little brother's hand. For him, a first-time graveyard ritual. He is now old enough to understand. If not for the sand on our shoes, the telltale signs on our clothes, this 9-year-old cloud in our eyes, you may miss the magnitude of this day, this event, this precious physical evidence. Gardening, yay, thank you. Gardening with Granny. My gradually aging hands tug at delicate, crisp, dead leaves, clinging to the still green stem of the potted creeper in the corner of my carport. I cannot tell if it's the bent back stance or the way I mutter to myself, tossing away the brown fronds and cobwebs, clasping the assortment of rocks and shells, of surrounding bricks and ceramic blue tiles. The ease and confident speed with which I separate the dead from the living, these obstructions to growth, unafraid of meeting the unexpected insect, getting my hands muddy, spending this precious time focused on this task, instead of seemingly more pressing matters waiting at my desk. And perhaps it is all of these things. And finally, the involuntary humming spiraling up from my chest, which reminds me viscerally of my grandmother, nearly 6 years gone, her unforgettable, unwieldy garden, the evocative, heartfelt gospel songs. She wove these into her weeding and seeding, her blanket of green wrapped around the house, continuously infused with her ordinary history, my extended family's expanding trove of memory. Every story knows its teller. Every story has its time. Yours and mine has its place and time. It's time. At sea. A hospital entrance facing a familiar shore. A grandmother, post-delivery of her 12th child, lost here in 1969, less than 2 years before my birth. On the same site under the same Durban sky. Now I returned, not knowing it was the final farewell to my second granny, the only one I'd known. Taken the elevator, long corridor to her ward, surreal. Silently, I enter her room, resisting the urge to drown. A still shrunken sparrow in a nest of sheets. The windows are sandblasted, rusted, and sealed. I breathe, acutely aware of whether she does too. Only her bed chart matches the name to the body I see. Pondering how the rotated Alzheimer's anecdotes, the cruelty of time, have reduced her to this hollow. No messages from relatives prepared me for this. How close death felt, the waves of shock or sorrow. I expected to at least share a smile, a greeting, having flown from another city, not visited in a while, apparently refusing food, I sensed she was already gone, had chosen to let go, believed her time here was done. Frozen in the silence between us, in that pale, sterile room, I was grateful for the sunlight, distant sounds of the ocean, as I struggled to accept that this is how it would unfold. We would speak in silence, her eyes closed, skin cold. I could have cried for the fact that I'd arrived too late, regretted the letters I didn't write, the calls I didn't make. But even in more recent visits, I was a pleasant stranger, not her beloved granddaughter, erased in her mental state. I took a few photographs, needed to preserve that memory. I said what I needed to say, trusted that somehow she heard, kissed her forehead, stroked her thin strands of undyed hair, floated out of the building, found myself sobbing by the sea. I return to the water. I return to the sea. We return to our mother. We return to be. I bathe in the lifelight of my elders, the ones now dissolved from sight, the ones in whose shadow I now stand. I rise from the soil of their succumbing, shifting under the tuition of time. My young roots and limbs still learning, tested by these weathering seasons, sustained by the whispering waters. So I come to know my own ground, awaken to my own vibration, my sound. As I bend and branch and bud, as I break and blossom and bear, as my arms spread and my roots sink, as my trunk extends and expands on my island. In solitude, yet inseparable from the nourishing radiance of sky, the unfailing embrace of the land. You you are a river that cannot be denied. You are a river that will not be denied. A daughter, a son, born to return. And Father Sky, Mother Sea, remembers each one's name. alone on our paths, great or small, essentially, eventually, oh, oh, the same. I'm not sure where we are in time.
You're still fine. If you want to do more, there is still time for more.
At the periphery of skin and unbridled imagining, strings constantly pull me from presence toward hidden desire, further knowing. No exclusive settling in the here and now keeps me from the yearning for that, there, more. Unnavigated shores call, sing my secret name, unshackle the parts of me that have been tamed, muted by duty, domesticity, appropriate conditioning, incessantly distracted by self-generated traffic. In one sudden morning, I may kick through the window pane, explode the glass sheet overhead, not by physical breaking. The shattering will be music, perhaps only to my ears. Not even the rain of unspoken fears will hinder me. Many will say I've gone blind, as they've done before. And I will smile and say they have lost sight of an open, beckoning door. Truth is both spirit and flesh. Truth is both spirit and flesh. Truth is the hotel bill or photograph discovered in a pocket, the open mouth saying nothing in defense. Truth is the fact splattered across courtrooms, exposed to strangers, cameras, and microphones. Truth is the vibration in your chest and stomach pit that hits when you read or hear a real guru's words. Truth is the child speaking without thinking, unaware of the adults they've suddenly stripped naked. Truth is the breath, absent from the body of a beloved who will not wake up or ever again laugh into your eyes. Truth is the uninhibited hug projected from the heart, or the electricity of a long time lover's touch. It's the smoke or stench that cannot be dismissed or disguised. It's the bone that waits decades to be found, the memory in our cells, the irrepressible rising of tears. It can be understood in any language. It lives within the word and the sound. Truth is liberation and source of great pain. It is both water and fire, the written, the unwritten, the visible, the invisible, the space and the line. It's different. It's the same. It is buried, yet it will not die. Truth is the silence before, beneath, and beyond the lie. It waits for you and I. It waits for you and I, 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 for you. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. Sure, that was incredible. I'm sure everyone in the audience can agree with me there.
Yeah.
Very moved. You are a performer, and sure, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you. It felt good to be in this circle. There's something that happens when we sound across cyberspace. I have no control over what you're really experiencing or feeling, or whether the sound is really coming through, but it doesn't matter. It's extraordinary to be in your own private space, but feel this level of presence and connection. And I do think poetry is something so visceral that it also works. It's not just the technology. It really works in that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, and I think we can, yeah, you were performing, even if you were isolated in your space, that for me, it came through very clearly. Yeah, so I think we will take some questions from the audience now. If people want to leave a comment or anything like that, you can raise your hand or type it up in the chat. I'd love to get us started. I'm curious, you obviously bring in a lot of song or singing and that in between your poems, which really adds to the whole experience for me. And I'm wondering, is that part of your writing process? You know, do you when you conceive the poems, do the songs or the music come with it? Are these songs your own songs as well? I assume so. Or is it a separate thing that you bring in later, or how does that work for you?
Thanks. It comes in different ways. And yes, they're all mine. I think of them as sung poems, but also I think my relationship with poetry as lyrical, as a listening practice. My first collection, Born in Africa, but in the beginning, I describe it as writing as listening. And for me, there is definitely, just like music, you hear the notes and then you hold, what makes the music is also those beautiful lulls of sound, the lulling and the silences that punctuate or that come when you least expect them. And for me, I haven't been trained formally as a singer. I think of what I do as sounding, and I do as an applied artist use instruments that are unplugged from any machine, indigenous mostly, because I feel my body is just one of those instruments. And to read poetry or to narrow my understanding of what it is, what its capacity is, to narrow it down to a page or literary art would be to take its blood. There's something about its aliveness that is about how it is received as sound, even when you're reading silently. So even as I write, I can hear when a phrase or a line drops. It's less about rhyming, even though we play with those toys or techniques, but I can hear when it's falling out of place, or I can hear when it's reverberating to bring something else in. And I just follow in kind of, I love whales, and I kind of think I'm a whale in my last life. I'm not trying to tell people that. So there's a kind of echolocating is what I'm trying to say, is that feeling of following the feeling and following the sound. And it's beautiful because it never fails me. The more that I do it, the more I get used to knowing, there it is. So they're absolutely intertwined. And I also think that that's just a return to Indigenous practice. A lot of my claiming and healing in terms of ancestral disconnection, or die gebreekte snaar, as we sometimes say, a cord across generations, is really affirming that the separation of all these different media is not the way that poetry would have naturally, or story would have been told. It was often sung. Anyway, we know this, but yeah, they definitely come together.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Does anybody else want to say anything, ask anything, comment anything? Charles.
Yeah, that was a wonderful performance. Like a true storyteller from the past. That was really wonderful. It reminds me of my old friend Pops Muhammad. We used to have long conversations with shakers and rattles in our hands, and shake and rattle each other through hours and hours of conversation and stories and things. And that really reminded me, your performance really reminded me of that. That was absolutely incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the holding.
Francis, go ahead.
Yeah, so first of all, I would like to say it's my very first time of participating in this poetry session. It's very amazing. Yeah, so Malika, this is my second time. You know, the very first time I watched you, or I was invited, was at book launch in Cape Town. That's when it was it was so amazing, especially when you have that, I don't know how you call it, that the drum or what.
Ocean drum.
The
It's the
ocean
ocean
drum.
drum.
That's the particularity. I've been to so many performances, but when it comes to you, that's your particularity, and I do love that. So as I always follow the Red Wheelbarrow page on Facebook. So I never paid attention to, like, posts, like, when there is a poetry session. But last week when I saw this and I read it was Malika Ndlovu, I'm like, hey, I have to. I even commented there, say she's amazing. So this is like my second time, now that I'm no longer living in Cape Town, I'm in Joburg. So it's not, I wouldn't have that, that time to go to book launch and, if you are invited and be part of your shows. But this was amazing. It was amazing. I really loved. I didn't want you to stop. Even when you asked about time, I was like, no, continue. It was just so amazing. Like, really. Yeah, thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Francis.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. You said at the beginning that you have a book that a collection, if I got you right, a collection that is coming. I'm really looking forward to that. Please let us know. I don't know how, but yes, yeah, please let us know so that we,
Definitely, we'll put the word
yeah.
out. Also, of all of my previous publications, this one I definitely want to have intimate circles of people, minimally on Zoom, but across the country, because it's a book that talks about the generative nature of grief. So even if you just think about how a lot of these poems, they exist because they come from a process of grieving. But they have a life of their own, and they speak to some learnings or growth or relief that has come from the process. And I'm very excited about having those kinds of conversations where it's not only what happens to us, but how we respond to it, and also how we listen to nature's example, where death is very much a part of life. So we're very shocked right now. We've been 3 years of shock.
Yeah.
In many ways, and overwhelmed, but I feel a kind of relief that we can actually have conversations about what's affecting all of us in different ways, and how poetry or creativity serves in that practice, because it's not about being a qualified or established poet or artist. Creativity is inherent to being human. And the permission to express creatively is part of our healing resource before we go for the pills and the anesthetics. But thank you. Good to meet you, Francis.
All right, sure. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much. Georgia.
Hi, Malika. Thank you so much. I don't have a question per se. I just huge, enormous appreciation. I feel like I've found gold tonight listening to you. I mean, it really was absolutely stunning. And I was reminded, I mean, I love the prayer-like quality of your work. And I don't think I've ever experienced percussion used like that with poetry. And it's just stunning what you do with your voice. And the percussion and, you know, this prayer-like quality is extraordinary. And I love what you said about grief as well. And your one of the first poems that you read, which was, I didn't get the title.
Let the Wound Weep.
Only the Wound, that's it. And only the words were, only the wound knows. And it felt like, was that right? Yes. And it really felt like that just resonated through everything that you read after that. And that these instruments really bring that. They just brought this incredible resonance all the way through. I absolutely loved it. And I also was reminded, I don't know if you've ever noticed that or been inspired by him, but I was reminded somewhere of Bobby McFerrin and his work when he uses the audience and some spoken word and some sounds, and you really, because you know his presence is extraordinary, and you have that. I mean, he bucket loads. It was, I couldn't believe that even over Zoom there it was. You know, this amazing delivery just happened. So thank you so much. It was wonderful to be here.
Thank you, Georgia. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Also, I mean, if I think about just the idea of what connects us as human beings across distance, across perceived difference, across generations, even across time, I dare to say, it's just, we are vibrational beings. Our bodies are cells that are vibrating at a certain pitch in order for us to be flesh. To be material. And I love the fact that some part of us, when you talk about the sacred or the ritual aspect, you can't quite tell why you know that's what that sounds like, but it's there. We do know this. We remember those sacred places of containment when we gather for whatever, you know, path it might lead us on. And it is very powerful the way poetry can bring us into that place, and also this sounding of it as opposed to only writing it, not as opposed, but you know, alongside. Thank you. Umi.
Hi.
Hello, sis.
I mean, I don't think I can praise you enough for what I've just experienced. That was such healing, such medicine, such water.
Thank you.
I do have a question to ask you. So you said you were writing it, not you were writing it, but you said it is, we can tell that it's also through a process of grief. I was wondering, like, how long did it take you to collect, to put together the collection? And from, the first poem, and then you would go back, like, what has your time period been like with this experience?
Grief changes your concept of time. That's the first thing I want to say. And in terms of the traumatic impact of any kind of loss, I am a strong advocate for taking your time. I even have one of those other sung refrains is, take your time, take your time, take your time, take your time. And depending on how you sing it and which of those simple words you emphasize, it's really expanding into that message around, as Georgia was pointing to, only the wound knows. So we have unconscious, I want to say, practices in most societies and even in our families of feeling that there's some appropriate period for mourning, or a period in which you're supposed to recover from grief. And I think there's a lot to be discussed about that, because many times well-intentioned, kind of projection of what that time frame should be is actually secondary trauma to the person who's in the experience. And so, for example, the poem about my stillborn daughter, Iman Bongiwe, it's 19 years later. It's not day 5, it's not day 15, it's not year 15. It's a long time ago. But my body remembers, and I would never say her name casually. And when I speak that poem of remembrance, if I cry today or not tomorrow when I do, that's my right. And I think that the way, often people say you teach others how to teach you, how to treat you. And so this practice of us claiming our own wild, indigenous to yourself, natural ways of grieving, which will be different and will take as long or as short, be visible or invisible as is needed for you. So in terms of the book, actually, I think I was born into a family that was really bereft. Literally, there had been a death of that first grandmother when my mother, a year or two later, fell pregnant with me. And I feel as though I was in those waters from a very young age, just curious about the weight of the silences around me and the evident sorrow that I saw written in the bodies of my family. And my life practice has led me to many different ways of being drawn to this conversation around the pain. And it brought me relief to talk and to write. But I also recognize how it seems to free others to be able to do that. So for me, Grief Seed was partly a trawling. It was like I had endless options of what I could have drawn together that hadn't yet been published, that could have gone in this book. But I also had quite a concentrated focus on grief throughout lockdown, especially in the beginning, where I could really, in the last 3 years, well, right in the beginning, the first 21 days, the first impulse was to do an online applied arts or applied poetry intervention and write a poem a day and share it online with an image. It felt like I can't make sense of what's going on, but I need to touch it with this creative, I need to work with it somehow in this way and share it, hopefully for benefit of others. So there were quite a few poems that came from that 21 days of lockdown. And they were really spontaneous meditations on just what was going on the day or what hit in the news. But I didn't get to a whole book until I spoke to an editor who said, of the 3 manuscripts you submitted for publication, this is the one. So somewhere there's also, even though I give myself a lot of permission, it really helps to have someone else say, no, it's not going to be a burden of a book to, write about all this grief in so many ways. It's the right time. It's resonating exactly as you think, it's working for you, it will benefit other people, or it will be resonant for other people. So that's how long it's been with Grief Seed. But as I said, some of the pieces are actually older because the griefs are spiraling in nature. The things you thought you've gotten over sometimes can really be sparked. The last thing I want to say is I wrote a piece particularly about spiraling that I'm going to be reading and speaking about at the Franschhoek Literary Festival next Friday, with Bongani Kona and Karen Shimka interviewing us about death and grief and loss. It's called, if you haven't read it yet, it's Our Ghosts Were Once People, and it's inviting a conversation around death, dying, and loss across multiple spectrums of the planet, of species, of a relative, of a pet. It's all there. So yeah. It's not a linear process. That's all I can say. It's not linear, and it's never really done.
Thank you for that info. I'll pop links to the Franschhoek Festival in the chat just now. Anyone else with a question or comment?
Oh, Jacques made it post ISCOM.
I'm so sorry. I'll have to listen to the recording.
You're in for
I'm glad you're here.
Hello from me.
Barbara says hello.
Hi, Barbara.
Okay, Ed, fire away.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Malika. That was absolutely gorgeous. There's no one who does quite what you do. I mean, I've heard you in different contexts, and that's very clear. So a gift. Thank you. And what speaks to me particularly is the generative nature of grief, is what you called those poems about your mother and your grandmother. Beautiful, beautiful sequence of poems. Very powerful stuff. So yeah, looking forward to revisiting those. And Melissa, I don't want to steal your riff earlier about the music, but I'm fascinated with music in general, and so the conversation around the mix of the voice and the text was really interesting for me. And I wondered, is it? I mean, it works as an echo, as a complement. Do you find, to get to the point, do you find that the song just gets to places that words cannot get to, and that's how?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Firstly, Ed, thank you so much for your just listening and honoring this work, because it does feel like therapeutic work. I often say that I would have been in Falkenberg or on some medication if I didn't have creative expression. I really feel that to be born in this country, or, and now we could say the whole planet anywhere, it's creative expression is definitely a medicine of sorts, and the practice of sounding, it's generative in a way that I feel is part of, when I say it's so natural, I don't mean that necessarily comes naturally to everybody. I think that easing into that can happen. But what I mean is this feeling of a kind of infinity loop, or like an inhale and an exhale, the one that must balance the other. That relationship with word, sound, silence is definitely there for me. And also, as I was saying earlier, this feeling of listening, because I often share what comes through me and give it away for free. I ask for it to be credited, but those way, for me, it's so important that it gets used, it's not mine on some level. I don't take 100% ownership over the material that comes through me. I really feel if you say, I've heard that before, I can't quite pin where, I feel like, as you say, we have our own ways of doing it, of working with these different elements, but it's universal sounds, it's universal vibration, it's universal need. And we feel it even before words. So yes, for me, the silence is the sacred place that I hope to get to at many points in the creative process. Sometimes it's about starting there, or there's a flurry. And for me, going into the silence is really important when I revisit it to see what's working or not working. So suddenly it's part of an editing process. But also just thinking about creativity as something sacred, not just a talent or a skill that needs to be commercialized or commodified. It is definitely a sacred practice for me.
I think the extent to which you're connected to that you could see tonight, feel tonight, connected with others. So thank you, Malika. Hey.
Thank you, Ed.
Thanks, Ed. And we have another hand from Liz. Just unmute yourself. There we go.
Hi, Malika.
Hey,
thank you.
Liz.
Beautiful, wise performance. I was struck by the spaciousness of your voice. You let it go as far as it can. It's a very sort of song-like but sacred place you're in. Deeply moving. To me, I think grief is always there. Maybe suffering is a choice, but you certainly blew us away, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz. I love what you said about going as far as it'll take you, because this relationship with breath, if you think about life being a fundamental reliance on breath, and of course that's super relevant now, but that idea of, that's definitely why I call it sounding even more than singing, is because I let the sound of the feeling or the full body of the word go as far as my breath will take me. And I can feel as I make the sound how my body is saying more or enough, you better round about now, it's going to go out. Like it'll go off. And actually off isn't a problem, because there's an organic nature to this that isn't about hitting perfect notes. It's sound medicine. It's not song. Song is lovely. Yeah, lovely.
I think it's very evolving, very developmental, taking it, and that's very, very courageous that you hold the space. Beautiful.
Emergent is the word that jumps to my mind. I'm really passionate about emergence theory because it humbles us as human beings to get beyond our notions of perfection and of ownership, to sit at that threshold where you are gifted something that is beyond you, and that you can then take some of that back home from that place into a poem or into a song, and learn how to be comfortable with the movement of going to the place of discomfort or the edge of what you know, and then coming back, thinking of it as a gift rather than, oh my God, or what will people think? I think also as I get older, you know how the phrase goes, I care less about what people think. You know, I'm a grandmother of 2 kids, and I just feel like I have full permission to be whatever version of myself. And I think it's so important for younger generations, even people that I'm mentored, ideally more through living example than what I could do in a session, you know? Because I'm saying, go home to yourself, find your own voice. Please don't become a Leboite or a Malikite or a, you know, Busisi white. Do you know what I mean? Each of those people are doing what that instrument of their incarnation is meant to do. And I'm trying really hard to just do me.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, to me.
So I just want to say something that I didn't get to say, and it's just on me now. And I don't know if you're going to understand this. So in my culture, I would call you Mama. But something just wants to say Tamago, Gogo.
Yeah, bon.
Like Tamago.
Tokoza.
Okay. Sorry, Mal, I had to let it out.
No, sorry. I actually was saying that inside. It just didn't feel necessarily, but we are this thing of saying through you am I, through you am I. We are only here because of those who came before. And the moment that we say the word ancestor, some part of our brainwashing tells us that some people are talking about culture or difference, when actually, how did any of us get here without ancestors? I don't know. We are a composition of everything that happened to us and everyone who came before. And that makes us really wealthy, actually, even if the burden of the story that sits in ourselves is painful. That's not the only sound, if you're really listening. That's not the only sound of what's sitting in our bodies. There is another poem called, oh, please, can I end with this one? One more. And are we going to wrap round
Yes,
about now?
please.
Okay, yay. So I was talking to myself, really. This is how you heal. Slowly, honestly. You waste no time asking why you, why this wound exists. Instead, courageously, gently, you ask its name. You listen for resonance with any place your heart has been before. You open wider. Give permission to tears, rage, shame. Allow their salt to purify the sight. And in the slightly numb subsequent calm, you ask the real questions. Why did I draw this into my life story? Where are similar roots or patterns in my history? What did I learn or gain back then? What do I need to do, say, try again? Once more, be still, gentle, listen deeply. Now the silence will offer you its ultimate service. And with certainty, you will know how this very wound could help you grow. What you are still clinging to, follow that ache and burn. Repeat the process until the lightness in your chest, the turbulent ocean of your mind washes you up to a new shore. Now rest. Honor your conquest, your transcendence of ego games, of fear. Wrap yourself and the changing wound in gratitude. Tie a ribbon around the part that belongs in the past. Keep your light focused on where your pain has led you to. The soil is fertile now. Observe where new life has begun. Stay alert for life's clues and cues along your path. Stay in the haven of your heart. Keep its doors open to avoid suffocation or blame. Sway, dance, play to the rhythm of its music. There is always a song composing itself in there. Remember to know the myriad faces of love is the sole, unmistakable reason you are here. Thank you. Will you remember that as you leave? Imagine if it was just that beautifully and simple. It's the only reason we're on the planet. My little son used to say, I used to ask him, Rain, what's the meaning of life? You know, as you ask a kid, because they know so much. And then he'd say, duh, love. You know, like, why are you on this planet? Duh. That's what I'm here for. So I hope that you remember this as you leave this circle, and thank you so much for the beauty of your listening and the questions that gave me gifts, because I had to find those answers in me. Thank you so much. Rest well tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Malika.